there, welcome to Snowpal's Polyglot Software Development Podcast. Today's podcast is not going to be a technical podcast. It's about something an article that I read, I think yesterday it was, and I posted quickly on LinkedIn, but I figured, it was worth having a quick podcast about it. So the topic is going to be coffee badgers. At least that's the term that I read. I mean, you can Google the term up. So coffee badges, here's what I believe it means. People, this is in the context of working, returning to office RTO. This is the topic, coffee badgers. Coffee badges, I guess, refers to people who show up at work and then they clock in, probably pick up coffee, have a chat or two with their coworkers, maybe work for a little bit in the office, and then head back home and continue working from home, and they end the day at home. So that's the idea. The idea is to sort of show up so people see you, that they know that you exist, and then sort of show your face, do a little bit of work during the time that you're there. But the idea is to just be there, socialize for a bit, maybe attend a meeting or two, and then go back home and pick up from where you left off. So the idea is to not stay the whole day there, but take the pain of getting to work, perhaps every day of the week, or maybe 3 out of 5 days. I don't know however it works in the context of the person who's coffee badging. And then that's the schedule, right? So they get started in the morning, commute to work, maybe spend a couple of hours, 2, 3 hours, maybe a half a day or less than half a day there, and then head back home and then continue the work. And then there's a topic, an article around it, and you can look it up. And I was like, what? I figured I just want to share my 2 cents. This is in addition to what I've said on the LinkedIn post. Let's talk about it. There's plenty of chatter about getting back to work, like return to office. During the pandemic, people, everybody was working. Most people were working from home. The idea was, people got used to it. They enjoyed it. They were productive. But then companies, decided to sort of reverse course and have them show up at work. Now, is it effective? Is it not? Does it work for you, for your team, for your company? Yada, yada, yada. I mean, to each our own. But I think it's just, I wanted to share my high level thoughts on this topic. So let's do this. I live in Ashburn. I live a few miles west of Washington, D.C., about 30 miles west of DC. And let's take an example. I'm just going to pick a random company because the article started with, I believe, memory serves me right, with Amazon, because Amazon is one of these large organizations who I believe have told their employees that they need to be at work every day of the week starting the 1st of January. Something along those lines. And people, there were reactions to it. I read that some people had sent an email, gotten some signatures, and then sent an email to the chief of AWS. But I really doubt they're going to. My speculation is that nothing's going to. I mean, they don't make changes, because if they came to a decision to do that, they have a reason for it, and I doubt a few signatures would necessarily make the difference, at least in this case. So the article said that since Amazon has enforced it, and I think I read an article today that AT&T is doing it as well. I don't know when that start date is for having their employees get back to work 5 days of the week. Now more companies potentially are going to follow suit. Companies that have been wanting to do it but didn't want to be sort of getting the flack, if you will, because not everybody started doing it. But now if you have a big company that's doing it, it's quite easy. You're going to be like, what, if Amazon's doing it, they're a multi-trillion dollars, max 7 organization, then there's a good reason for us to do it as well. So sure, there's going to be at least two schools of thought. People who believe that working from home is productive, has been productive, is productive, and will continue to be productive. And then perhaps folks who belong to the other school of thought, the other end of it, who believe that, what, for Amazon, for instance, right, as a company, nope, everybody should come back to work 5 days a week. That's how we used to build software. That's how we used to function. Things changed during the pandemic, but that's not a permanent shift in paradigms. And we're going to get back to our routine as it was, because that's how we believe things are going to be more productive, right? That's two extremes. And there could be companies in the middle that support hybrid models, and a different combination, a permutation and combination of this. Now I want to take the example because again, there's no agenda or no bias. There is a bias. What I'm trying to say is, I'm going to make clear where I stand. There's no surprise there, is what I was looking for the word surprise. Sorry. We at Snowpal, we are a remote first company. Everything we've built over the years that we are building right now, and we will continue to build, is going to be done pretty much remotely, right? People work from different parts of the world. There's a lot of flexibility, and we have certain rules and guidelines that dictate how we build our software in terms of just the mechanism and the processes. But that's who we are as a company, and we strongly believe that that is the way to go. That doesn't mean that that's the right answer or that's the right answer for everybody, but that surely is the right answer for us at this point of time. I don't see change in the near future, but who knows? I can predict the future. I mean, we all wish we could, right? So that's where we stand as a company. So clearly, the argument, this conversation, or this monologue is going to be certainly be biased, but I'm going to try and make it as unbiased as possible to the extent possible, at least, right? So I'm going to take me as somebody who lives in Ashburn, and let's take an example of a company like Amazon that's headquartered, I believe, in Arlington, in the DC metro area. And I want to, let me do a screen share. Actually, let me share my entire desktop, make this smaller and just make sure. Yep. Okay, cool. So you can see this window, right? That's awesome. So I'm going to take the Amazon Arlington address. I believe it's this building here, the nice, beautiful building. It's 525 14th Street. And the closest metro station to that building is it's the Crystal City Metro Station. So I just plugged this in here. Ashburn. Thankfully, we have a metro station we didn't have years ago, but thankfully there is one now. So it should take. Let's say I just picked the time, right? If you left at 12:44, you're going to take the Silver Line, go to Roslyn. There's a transit. Takes about 9 minutes, I guess, to get the Blue Line, and then you go to Crystal City Metro, right? So there is one change you have to make, a line change, and it's 71 minutes, right? It's okay. So let's keep that in mind. Diagram, I actually drew one, and we look at that. So it's 71 minutes to the commute time for the train itself. Now, from that metro station to the building, it says it's about a 3-minute walk, like 0.4 miles, but I was there like not too long ago. It takes more than 3 minutes. By the time you get out of the train station, and it's just shy of half a mile, and you get to the building, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you walked at like 3 miles an hour, I guess 0.3 miles would be like six minutes. This is a little bit more than 0.3 miles, so it'll be like 8 minutes. If you walked at 3 miles an hour, if you walked at a brisker pace, maybe it's lesser. So it would be 8 minutes. It took, we were walking at a reasonable pace. It was like between 5 to 8 minutes. And then after you enter the building, it takes a while. I mean, depending on where you are, these big buildings, there's security checks and whatnot. It could be another 5 minutes at least by the time you get to your cube or your office. So let's make sure that this screen is what's being shared. Yep. So I drew this up here. So let's take my house to the Ashburn station. It's about like 10 minutes, right? Give or take. And then from the Ashburn station, I mean, I guess you have to wait for the train, right? I mean, you're going to give yourself some time. I'm not a metro expert, but I've taken the metro fairly a fair number of times, I should say. So I reckon you're going to show up there a little bit earlier. So about 10 minutes, maybe five. Let's, to be safe, you want to give it 10 minutes because I don't know what the frequency of these trains is. Perhaps it's a lot more frequent in the mornings and evenings during the busy times, busy windows and at other windows. But regardless, it's a fair assumption. And then it takes 60. I said 60 minutes here, but it's not 60 actually. It says 71. So let's go with 70 minutes here. So 10, 20, and then 90 minutes to get to the Arlington station. So wait, 10 minutes from the house to the station in Ashburn. 10 minutes to wait for the train, that's 20 minutes. 70 minutes to get to the actual commute between those two stations. So it's 90 minutes. And then 10 minutes walk to the office, it's 100 minutes. Given the walk and the time it takes to go up to your cube or office, it's probably going to be a little bit more, but let's go with this conservative estimate. 20, 90, and 100 minutes. On the way back, it's going to be 10 minutes shy, possibly, because you're not waiting for, wait a minute. It's 10 minutes and then back 70 minutes. It's 10 minutes. You're not waiting for the train, oh, wait, hang on. I actually missed it. There is this wait here because you have to wait to, right? So it's going to be the same. 100, 10, 20, 90, and 100. So that's 200 minutes, roughly. I mean, that's a lot of minutes. It's 3 hours and 20 minutes. So I mean, let's just digest that for a second. For Krish to be able to actually show up in that building every single day, it's 320 minutes spent commuting, literally commuting. Now, you could argue that since you're not driving, you could possibly be more productive in the train, but I don't know how busy these trains are. And maybe you are the kind of person who can be productive on a moving train like a metro. Not all of us are that way. I haven't seen very many people do that. It's probably, it's not empirical data, but it's probably a really small percentage of people who, oops, I just want to make sure I was still recording. Sorry. There's very few people who probably are doing that. I've seen people work on Amtrak's and the planes, but it's difficult for me. Maybe the Amtrak slightly better than the plane because maybe there's not as much turbulence, but still, regular subways and metros, I don't know how productive you could really be. Can you actually write code? I'm not sure. Maybe you can think about what you're going to do or plan your day, but not much more than that. So what is it? 200 minutes, which is like 3 hours, 20 minutes, right? 3 hours, 20 minutes per day. So let's do some basic math here. So that's, let me open, maybe I can open text edit. Why text me? It is taking that long. Okay. So I'm just going to make this nice and big. So it's 320 minutes each way. That's, we said 3 hours. Hang on. I got it wrong. Wait, let me go back to do the math. Sorry. So I said 10, 20, 90, 100, 200 minutes. 3 hours and 20 minutes. That's 20 minutes every day, right? Now, if you're doing it 5 days a week, as Amazon expects for people to show up, that's what, 15 hours and then another 100 minutes. So 16 hours and 40 minutes, right? 16 hours and 40 minutes a week. And let's say you're working, there's 52 weeks in a year, 2 weeks, your holidays, and maybe you get 3 to 4 weeks of time off, for if you're lucky or if you've been working a bit in the same company. But even then, you have 46 weeks per year, 46 work weeks. So let's do 16 hours times 46. So it's 460 hours. And then there's another, 460? And you 240, 276, 736 ish. Is that what it is? 736, 16 times. Yep. So it's 736 hours. Let's not forget the minutes. You have to multiply the 40 minutes by the 46 weeks as well. That's going to be 160, 24, 1840 minutes. So 1840, right, by 60 minutes is 30 hours, roughly. So let's add another 30 hours there. That'll make it 736 plus 30. The grand total we're looking at is 766 hours per year. Wow. Okay. So and then the typical, work year is 2000 hours. So then you have to add the 766 hours to that 2000. So your actual work year becomes 2766 hours. Now 766 out of 2000, what is it, like 33%? A little bit more than 33%? 38%. Yep. Let me make sure. Yep, it's close to 40%. Yep. So it's 38.3%. So basically you're saying 38.3% you're working more. You work by way of commute. Now, this is, to me, it's absolute insanity. 38.3% time you could have spent with family, with friends, doing n number of other things. You're actually going to be spending that time commuting. And the argument is, the argument the companies make is you're going to be more productive while you're there. Are they accounting for the time that you're spending getting there? Let's say it's not on them, it's on you, it's your personal time. So one could argue that it doesn't hurt their productivity or your productivity for the company. But we're all human. There's going to be time and energy spent in making these commutes. So are you not, again, you have to consider weather conditions as well. Wintertime it's cold, sometimes it's snowing, there is sleet. We don't have a ton of sleet in DC, but it does get pretty cold during winter. At least, especially during January and February, it gets below freezing. Even the last couple of weeks ago, it was below freezing. And if you're living in Boston or New Hampshire or Chicago or Minnesota, it's a different story altogether. Even if you're living in a warmer place like the West Coast, I think it's still, there's going to be, I don't know, if you're in Seattle, probably you're subject to weather like rain and maybe it's drizzling all the time. So it's not necessarily perfect conditions, not all the time, right? Not most of the time. So you're going to get drained out. We haven't talked about time you would otherwise spend at work. Maybe you're distracted a bit more than you might be at home. I don't know, but that's subjective, because the water cooler talks that cannot happen at home because there isn't one, or you don't have anybody to talk to. So you have no other choice but to actually work more, I would think. But let's ignore all of that. So that's 38% more time spent by way of commute, 766 hours. Let me make sure I'm still, yep. So, and this is meant to be the right way to do things for these companies. Now you could argue, hey, why do you want to live in Ashburn? Move somewhere closer to Arlington. But what happens is if you change jobs, I mean, do we all have the luxury to move as close to work as possible? I mean, Arlington is really expensive. Sure, one could downsize from living in Ashburn, get a much smaller property, but there's a cost of selling and buying. There's a lot of other things that come into play, and it doesn't work out, and it's not pragmatic to relocate every time you have a different job. Because there's no guarantee to your work life. There's nothing permanent about you. If tomorrow things change, people are going to be let go. That's just how things work. So are we supposed to relocate to every location, and can we afford to do that? I don't think so. I know people who work like an hour and a half away, and sometimes they actually stay at a hotel because it's just impossible for them to come back every day. And they spend their own money doing that. I get it. Companies are paying money, they're paying your salaries, giving you benefits, so they can dictate terms. But I think we are talking more productivity here. We're not talking who the quote unquote the boss is, but how do we coexist as society, even in a professional world, and be productive and do wonderful things, build great software. Now I'm talking to it more from the perspective of a software engineer. Now again, there are jobs that you have to be at work. If you're working at an Amazon warehouse, I presume, you know, till robots replace everybody, there's going to be people who won't have to show up there. That I get. There are some jobs that you cannot do if you're not there. But I'm just talking about jobs, at least the majority of jobs. This article referred to AWS and AT&T and T and stuff. If we talk about AWS and folks building software, it's very much like it's pretty much, not very much, it's exactly what we do at Snowball, right? We're a software company. So these things can actually be done remotely. You could argue what productivity and other things all day long, but it's theoretically and practically possible to do these jobs remotely, is what I'm trying to say. It's not like being at the warehouse or in a factory where you have to be there to assemble or put things together. Now let's also talk money here, right? Let's say somebody is getting paid, let's go with some round numbers. Let's say somebody is getting paid $100 an hour, give or take. And if they're working like 2,000 hours, it's going to be $200,000 a year, right? Be $200,000, right? Let's do it. But if you actually take that number and divide it by the total time you actually are spending because of the commute, let's divide that by 2,766. Now your hourly rate drops to $72 an hour. Hourly rate, including commute time, is $72 an hour, give or take. Right? So $100 an hour became $72 an hour. So that's essentially, what is it, 28%. Right? So it's 28% less than your actual rate. So if you're doing contracting, consulting, or even if you're doing a W-2 job, let's say you take the numbers and see what you're getting paid. You could choose to actually pick up a different job, get paid 28% lesser, but still make the exact same amount of not exact same amount of money, because you still get more money in hand. So let's take that to the grid. So, but you see what I mean. You're actually making $72 an hour, but you're working much lengthier hours. If you drew a parallel and actually did a comparison, it's like taking up another job that pays you 28% less. So you have all of that time back. Now you could put that time to better use or other uses. Maybe do a second job, or maybe maybe do some investments, maybe do some reading, maybe do some walking, or enjoy your hobbies, or spend more time with family, or build a business, or work towards building a business. There's a number of other things you could do in that time that will actually pay you even if not immediately, over a period of time. Because if you're building a business, you're coming up thinking about an idea and executing to that, and then you're seeing it through because you have all of that extra time with you. You now would have hopefully made that money and a whole lot more at a later point in life. So that's the whole gist of it. I know I want to discuss these numbers specifically because sometimes to digest the relative side of things, the subjective side of things, it does help, at least for me, as an engineer, to quantify it and throw some numbers there and see, okay, does this actually make sense? Now, we have not talked about the quality of life here at all, right? We're talking pure numbers, math, dollars, and time, and minutes, hours, and minutes. The actual impact to the quality of your life, the time that you could have otherwise spent, and because you're coming back after 766 hours of commute time per year, you are going to most likely have lesser energy. I mean, the younger you are, maybe the lesser impact it has. But life has a progression, right? Everybody is born at zero, and we have a finite time on planet Earth, and it's just bound to happen. It is going to, that's why cricketers or athletes retire at a certain point, perhaps much earlier than some of us office workers, because it takes a toll on your body. So when you're going to come back home after that commute, and you are going to change your life around it. So you're actually going to change, your change your lifestyle to suit the needs of your work, as opposed to having a lifestyle and fitting work and making that part of life. Now, if it sounds like luxury, maybe it is, but that's what some of us yearn to get, or try to work towards getting, essentially, at some point in our lives. So to each our own. Maybe you're in a phase of life where the dollar amounts and the money actually makes all of the difference. Completely understandable. We all go through different phases of life. And then this approach might work. But the problem is, when a company unconditionally says that every single person has to follow this, regardless, no matter what they're doing in terms of the job, their role, no matter where they live, that comes across as a little bit brutal to me, if you asked me. So that's kind of what I wanted to share in this podcast. Let me stop sharing now. Okay. I didn't realize it was going to take 20 minutes, but it does take time to actually go through these numbers. So I'm going to wrap up in the next couple of minutes, but hopefully they give you an idea. So again, what is the takeaway here? Well, if you have to make that call, if you're a large company where people are going to, quote unquote, put up with things because you're paying them a whole lot of money, it's a whole lot harder for them to quit that and find another job that pays the same amount of money, or maybe they just you're giving them the quality of the work that you have available, which I have no doubts. As a software engineer, you're going to be building some phenomenal stuff working at AWS. So maybe you're at a point in your career where that matters, and maybe that's a great thing. So it's okay. It's okay for you to do the commute, or maybe it's early part of your life. Maybe you just graduated, you haven't started a family yet, and maybe then it's possible. But this talk that I had, this monologue was not just for a specific demographic, it's just in totality. So maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work for you or for the company. But if you're an organization, if you're like, Krish, can you give me a couple of pointers, right? Maybe you're not this large organization, you're a mid-sized or a small company. How can you make remote work or hybrid work? Or let's just talk about remote work. Because I'm not saying everybody's got a perfectly good work ethic, that people are always available when they're working from home, because companies have gone this other way, gone sort of tracted from where they were during the pandemic, not just because we've all moved on, but also because maybe they saw some significant drop in productivity. Why does that happen? It is a number of things that can contribute to that. One is, the hiring process. Did you even hire the right person, right people? Meaning, it's one thing for them to be good in what they do, like technically as an engineer, but what if their work ethic was not perfect? Maybe their time zones don't coincide with yours, and that doesn't have to coincide, because we have a team of disparate people in different disparate time zones. But we have core work hours where you have to be available at the click of a button on Slack for a huddle. The other person is expected to be available. You know what I mean? I mean, of course, you're going to grab a cup of coffee from your kitchen and stuff. That's understandable. But for the most part, you should be reachable within the first 25, 30 seconds. If you're not during the core hours, then it makes a difference. Those little things make a significant difference. Now, if it takes 2 minutes for you to get to your coworker every time you get on a huddle, and you're trying to do that 10, 20 times a day to 5 different people in the team, that's a lot of time wasted. So that's important, right? It's death by 1,000 cuts. So you need to keep an eye on those types of things. So you need to have a work culture and a philosophy that works, and a process that works for you. It's not etched in stone. It's going to have to continually evolve, and it changes from company to company, from time to time, from sprint to sprint, even depends. So you have to figure out what works for your team. The ultimate goal is to be productive, is to be happy, so people don't quit on you and your company. There's not too much attrition. You're not holding them simply because you're paying them a lot of money. It's because they actually truly enjoy what they do, and they could leave, but they choose not to leave because they enjoy what they do. If they're in a situation that they want to leave but they cannot because you're paying them a lot of money and it's not easy to find work outside that pays the same amount of money or maybe the same quality of work, then it's fine, right? Those are things that can bind people to companies. But unless you're a large organization where you have this beautiful brand name that you can flash, I don't think it's going to work. There are a handful of companies that are over $1 trillion. Like, what is it? Maybe five or six, possibly, maybe seven. But the rest of them, it doesn't mean you have to be trillion for you to be big. Then there's a number of companies that are like hundreds of billions of dollars, but there's still a lot of companies that are small and growing and upcoming, right? That will become unicorns and hope to become unicorns one day, much like ourselves here at Snowpal. So you have to just figure what the right balance is. Now, again, different cultures for different people. It's like, there's a number of restaurants, different types of cuisine, because there's no single cuisine that can appease the hunger of the world, at least in the way that it is expected to, which is probably why I believe Amazon said that, hey, this is how we're going to function. If that doesn't work for you, there's other companies out there, right? I'm paraphrasing what I read, but that was it. In that language, I'm sure a large company can use it. I don't know if you're a smaller organization, if you can actually use that language, because that's pretty blunt to me, right? I mean, it is candid. I give them that. But sometimes if you want to be appreciated, and if you don't show up to work on a day, if things cannot get done because you're the only one assigned to it, if you're that kind of person who takes pride, sometimes a smaller company can give that satisfaction a little bit more. I'm not saying big companies will not do it. I've worked for companies of all sizes in my career. I've found my calling in terms of the size of the company and the company, but for all of us, it takes that amount of time. Anyways, I could talk about this even more so, but hopefully that gives you an idea. It gives you the just. I would love to know what you think. What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Did I completely miss the mark? Let me know, right? Until next time, thanks.